Tuhan dedana kuminti Dutanaw itukay daunan Sumnoon sarahan may dinyo Arapid-apiten dukadaw naman ninyo Nakaya po doon nakaway ako di mo nanyin ka Amat si pasabdo tawal ko manda sa tangyaw Harap pa mo mataragat sa daw panmukunay mo As panapanayan ko na ugas numatano yakap at sinunay Nagmi ko na tano liyak mamakmayo
A star from the east descends upon the north in a province called Batanes. Its bright, twinkling light guiding our voices to those we all hold dear. From the furthest tip of the Philippine archipelago, beautiful Batanes, the star of the north, shines through. Immensely rich, not only in pristine nature, but also in history and culture, Batanes is the smallest province in the Philippines and the most isolated. In Batanes, the forces of nature reign supreme. Typhoons lash at the island several times a year, cutting them off entirely from the rest of the world. Everything in Batanes is shaped by the weather. The rugged cliffs, the rough seas, the gusty winds, the sturdy houses of stone, and its even sturdier people. The will to survive, to overcome, and to regenerate is the secret to the quaint and quiet beauty of Batanes. Practically all forms of life have adapted to the peculiar weather, especially the people, that hardy breed of men and women who proudly call themselves Ivatan. In Batanes, everything is a collective effort, from building a house to working the fields, to sending off a tataya into the open sea. But self-reliance can only go so far. The variety of crops that grow on its weather-beaten land is limited. The choppy waters and unpredictable climate discourage regular trade. And native fishermen, with their puny boats, are no match to the high-powered Taiwanese fishing vessels that regularly poach on their waters. In 1994, the whole province of Batanes was declared a protected area in recognition of its unique ecology and potential for sustainable development. The very small area of Batanes makes it imperative to view any development with a cautious eye, because any unplanned or unchecked exploitation of its resources can spell ecological disaster.
Kapipahabas danwa di pasayaw.
But if there is anything alarmingly endangered in Batanes, it is its human resources. The hard life has pushed many young Ivatans to seek out their fortune elsewhere, causing a trend in outmigration which threatens to destroy the insular spirit of their people. These and other issues in culture, nature, and survival in Batanes. Tonight on Earthlink. When Filipinos refer to the two farthest points north to south of the archipelago, they tend to say from Apari to Jolo, leaving out the farthest group of islands up north, collectively known as Batanes. Closer to Taiwan than it is to Luzon, Batanes is 525 miles away from Manila. Separated from the rest of the archipelago by wild waters and an even wilder weather pattern, this tiny province might as well be sitting on the edge of nowhere. Hence, the commonly committed sin of omission.
It's also an indication of how much this place has been forgotten. You know, it's a good indication that you know the neglect, you know, that this place has suffered.
Batanes is composed of 10 islands, only 3 of which are inhabited. The provincial capital of Basco is found in the island of Batan, with its picturesque shoreline strewn with limestone cliffs, sandy beaches, and broad, shallow reefs. Batan is also home to majestic Mount Iraya, a volcano that has remained dormant for the last 1,500 years. Half an hour boat's ride away from Batan is the island of Sabtang, which has the richest fishing grounds in the province. Sabtang has been named by the Department of Tourism as among the 12 best destinations in the Philippines. Its quaint villages, a living showcase of Ivatan tradition and cultural life. The largest and most inaccessible of the 3 main islands is Itbayat, which can be reached from Basco only by a 4-hour boat ride over choppy waters. Virtually untouched and unexplored, Itbayat promises great potential for farming and cattle raising. The fabled beauty of Batanes is matched only by its infamous weather, at whose mercy the existence of the Ivatan depends. Visited by at least 8 typhoons each year, the elements dictate the tempo of life in Batanes and worsens its isolation.
You know, were it not of this typhoon, then maybe we are not this, shall we say, behind in development. Because every time that we experience typhoon, after the typhoon, we have to start all over again, no? Most especially on agricultural production.
The variety of crops and trees that grow in the area have been limited to those that can withstand the lashes of wind and rain. Of these, only garlic is raised as a cash crop and is sold all the way to Manila.
Magtsaka silang nagtanim ng bawang. Kung wala silang pera, simple sabi nilang mga tao, kung mayroon kang alaga ng hayo, hindi mo maalis ang kunting pepar sa ipang kunting katawan niya sa katingan masaang, pabili mo. Yung bawang, kung mayroon kang 1 kilong bawang, pabili mo yan, pabili mo ng mga importante mo sa bakay mo.
Similarly, In terms of livestock, only cattle is raised for export. They thrive well in the province due to the open pasture lands and the cool climate that inhibits the outbreak of diseases. Goats, chicken, and swine are usually raised sparingly. And, as in the case of this little boy, they also substitute as pets. Ancient wisdom has taught the Ivatan they cannot lord over nature. So, they have learned to become one with the elements and with each other.
It's been good because the people have been able to survive and develop the institutions, the practices, the customs, the values to be able to survive even without assistance or aid coming from the outside.
Its remoteness has also discouraged outsiders from plundering the natural beauty of Batanes, allowing the province to preserve its idyllic pastoral terrain. Its bountiful marine resources, and the serenity which makes it an ideal flyway for migratory birds.
Maraming endangered dito. Ang identified endangered species dito. On marine resources, we have that green sea turtle. We have also that pink and red coral. Yun ang mga identified. And another is the green snail. Doon sa terrestrial flora naman, we have that yung mga eagles dito. All of the species of eagles are endangered. So we still have sea eagles here in Batanes.
In 1994, Batanes was named one of the 10 priority sites in the Integrated Protected Area System, or IPAS. All landscapes and seascapes in the entire province have been declared protected areas, where all human activities or intrusions are closely monitored, if not discouraged.
Everything in Batanes is marginal, and some part of Batanes is still untouched. And those untouched resources in Batanes should be left as is, so that by the next generation, hindi na mauubos yun.
Funded by the Global Environmental Trust Fund under the World Bank, this IPAS designation means that Batanes now has the unusual opportunity to develop the province in a way that is both economically and ecologically viable.
Under the protected area, what we have to do there is livelihood which are not traditional, or what we call alternative livelihood projects, which really will not put pressure on the environment.
Following Republic Act 7586, which provides for the creation and management of a national integrated protected area system, Batanes has been divided into different management zones. Sustainable use zones, where the use of natural resources may be allowed, provided there is no clearing, farming, settlement, or commercial activity. Multiple use zones, where agriculture, fishing, and other traditional and sustainable land use are allowed. Habitat management zones, which provide sanctuaries for rare, threatened, or endangered species of plant and animal life. And a special use zone, which is reserved for the installation of telecommunication facilities, irrigation canals, and electric power lines. Batanes was voted the cleanest and greenest province for Region 2 in 1996 and was a national finalist in the Cleanest and Greenest Award for Excellence that same year. However, on foresight, provincial leaders are now looking into a possible problem in solid waste disposal.
We have to devise ways of managing our waste because we are we are a fragile ecosystem and an island, and unless we check that, then our creeks and the sea will be affected, will be polluted. Right now, it's not a very pressing problem, so people are a bit lax about it.
At present, there is one major dump site in Barangay Diptan. Located along the fringes of Basco, it has a clear view of the waters nearby, a predicament environment officials are well aware of.
As of now, we don't have very parang mabigat na problema on disposal of this waste. Although if the population increases, yung mga garbage areas ng at least 2 municipalities here would affect our marine waters. But in the meantime, that we are assisting these municipalities in identifying areas other than these near waters, we still allow them because the volume of garbage is still insignificant, manageable.
Both local and environment officials insist there are no pressing environmental problems in Batanes, at least not as much as in other parts of the archipelago. This makes it an ideal ecological site to protect, because although everything in Batanes is marginal, whatever little they have remains intact. Lording it over the landscape of Batan is Mount Iraya, a volcanic peak that is almost always half covered by clouds and wrapped in the deepest green throughout the year. Dormant since 500 AD, Mount Iraya is home to a variety of rainforest vegetation, many of which are considered rare, if not very rare. For centuries, the Ibatans have kept Mount Iraya sacred because in many ways, it is the lifeblood of the island of Batan.
We need wood here, but we keep Mount Iraya intact because it's our source of water. It's also a source of lumber. So there is a practice here of utilizing, because we need lumber for the boats, you know. But people here respect the fact that, you know, the Mount Iraya is a critical source of water.
The fact that water continues to be sparkling and abundant in Batan is proof enough of how Iraya has remained inviolate. In general, the forests of Batanes are somewhat different from those of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Forest trees in Batanes are small, low-set, and have thick leaves, having adapted to withstand the constant battering of wind and rain. Unlike in other provinces, the forests of Batanes are not threatened by big-time logging operations or widespread slash-and-burn farming. The Ivatans gather what little forest products they need and leave well enough alone.
There's also this practice here now where they try to kaingin the area, then later also plant it with trees, with fast-growing trees, so it could be replenished.
The Ivatans were quite comfortable with their traditional ways until the province became a protected area and all forest activities had to be accounted for.
Nung araw, wala pang permit pumutol ng kahoy. Basta gusto kang pumupul ng kahoy nung araw, paggatong, paggawa ng bangka, basta sa sarili mo na. Pero ngayon, hindi ka basta-basta pumutol ng kahoy doon sa bukid kung hindi ka kumuhang permit sa DNR.
Most of the Ivatan's lumber needs go to the age-old craft of boat making. For generations, the seafaring Ivatans have relied on their round-bottom boats for fishing or to ferry them from island to island. Built mostly by hand, these round-bottom boats are guaranteed to pitch and roll with the waves, even in hostile weather. These handcrafted boats are carved out of a tree called palomaria, the same material used for house building and other domestic purposes, which is why the Ivatans have made it a habit to cultivate these in family-owned farms.
They have their own planted trees. Yun ang culture ng Ivatan. They have to plant their own trees so that they have trees to harvest.
A practice that made it difficult for most of the residents to understand why they now have to secure a permit before a single tree is cut.
Our great-grandfather have planted this kind of trees for house building at the Tipuho. Now, when the IPAS was introduced, absolutely, binabawalan, kunin yan. Otherwise, if you want to use it for your house building, you have to secure permit and at the same time, pay some amount. Kaya that is where the controversy arose.
For a while, it was a classic case of new laws conflicting with old ways. But guardians of the environment are quick to point out the permit is purely for monitoring purposes.
The impression of the Ivatans nung una is that bakit nila pinagbabawalan sa pagputol sa kanilang tinanim na kahoy. But we should correct that impression because the DNR is not actually banning the cutting of what they have planted. We at the DNR only certifies that the trees they have cut are actually what they have planted, and where they have planted is really their own lot.
To further strengthen the drive for reforestation, the DNR set up a nursery in Mahatao to provide seedlings for various types of local hardwood, like fast-disappearing ebony and arius, as well as a popular palomaria. As of 1996, some 75,000 seedlings have been raised, half of which have been distributed to the local community.
Gradually, people are learning, and so there is no threat now. We also cooperate in planting and the stopping of cutting of trees.
Reforestation is critical to Batanes, simply because there is very little forest cover to begin with. If not for the frequent storms and rains that visit the island, water shortage should have been a full-blown problem due to the lack of watersheds. Scarcity of land has forced Batanes to open up its woodlands to sustain grazing and agriculture. In Batan Island alone, almost 76% of the land has been opened up for use, sometimes at the expense of permanent vegetative or forest cover. And with birds of cattle constantly feeding on the grasslands, another concern comes to fore.
Soil erosion is a problem. We are, I understand before, one of the top 10 in terms of places that have serious soil erosion problems. So that means we have to adopt an agricultural crop production technology that protects us from soil erosion.
Fortunately for Batanes, the problem of erosion can still be arrested by the Ivatan's practice of fallowing, wherein croplands are left uncultivated for 2 or 3 years after harvest. Trees and bushes are also planted along the boundaries of their farmlands, not just to delineate boundaries, but also to keep the surface from eroding. Although still in a state of a precarious balance, the upland situation in Batanes is not as deep a concern as the rape of its waters by unscrupulous foreign fishermen.
Ang pangingisda naman ay hindi talagang hanap buhay, kundi minsan ginagawa din na sideline lang. Gaya namin pumapasok sa trabaho, kung off time namin, mangingisda.
Oscar Vargas works a night shift as a security guard in a local bank. By daybreak, he heads off to sea, hoping to earn a few pesos more from half a day's catch. Like everything else in Batanes, fishing is dependent on the cycle of the season. With only 4 to 5 months of fine weather for fishing, it is imperative to have an alternative job. Again, just like the rest of the industries in the island, fishing remains on a marginal level. To Ivatan fishermen, the measure of a good catch is when they have enough to bring to the dinner table. On a really good day, there would even be a few pieces to spare to make into kilawin over a few rounds of gin. When the sea is extra generous, even the kids who mill along the shoreline get a bonus. Whatever is left is taken home, either sold fresh at street corners or dried and salted for the rainy days. It all boils down to practicality. With limited hours of electricity and the absence of an ice storage plant, there is no sense for the Ivatans to harvest more than they can consume. And just as they refuse to utilize commercial fertilizers and pesticides for their farms, the Ivatans shun any form of fishing that would damage marine life.
Sa asosasyon, so yung lahat na illegal ng pamamaraan sa pangingisda ay binabawalan. Gaya nung dynamite fishing, saka ito yung cyanide, paggamit ng mga chemicals, ay talagang binabawalan namin yun.
But no matter how protective the Ivatans are over their waters, their marine resources are currently in grave danger because of the perennial and unabated intrusion of fishing vessels from Taiwan. Last year, 2 Taiwanese junks were apprehended near the waters of Sabtang.
Sabi nila na napadpad daw, pero actually talagang they are caught fishing at this point. They were about 2 kilometers away from the shoreline. And as the testament of those boarding people who I requested to apprehend, they told us that they were really fishing when they boarded the junk.
Not content with poaching over Philippine territorial waters, at one point, some of these Taiwanese operators even had the audacity to come ashore on the pretext of buying fish and recruiting Ivatan fishermen.
Employ local fishermen and telling them that I will be trained as a fisherman. But actually, as I have interviewed the rest of these native people who boarded these Taiwanese fishing junks, hindi daw tinitrain at ginagawa lang silang pahinante.
The municipal government rang the alarm bell on these activities when 2 Ivatans were reported missing after boarding Taiwanese junks.
Nahulog daw. Yan ang pagkasabi sa amin. Hindi namin alam kung paano nagawa. Nandun na sila sa dagat. Hindi namin alam kung anong ginagawa ng kapatid ko.
Her brother Delphin was only 20 years old when he disappeared somewhere in the open sea.
Wala na kaming habol dahil wala kaming ebidensya kung paano siya, kung paano nagawa yung kapatid namin na nahulog, kung ano. Kaya wala kaming habol.
In 1991, an executive order was created which established 2 sea lanes for the use of foreign fishing vessels. This was supposed to make it easier for the Philippine Coast Guard to monitor maritime activities in the area, particularly those of the Taiwanese. However, local fishermen believe the problem is far from over.
Ang laging sinasabi ng mga opisyalis natin sa gobyerno, mag-rely tayo dun sa Coast Guard dahil sila ang talagang trabaho nila yun. Pero pag sinabi doon, ano nila, walang barko talagang available. Maski makita mo yung junk doon, wala ka naman pang habol eh. Wala rin, walang magagawa.
Even more frustrating is that the few times local authorities manage to collar some Taiwanese poachers, all they can do is slap the intruders with a measly fine.
Kayang-kaya nila kasi alam mo naman yung cost nung ano nila, nung or value ng nahuhuli nilang isda is in million. So isang puno lang nung ano nila, nung bodega ng junk. So kayang-kaya nila bayaran yun, yung 1,000 lang per fisherman they will pay if they are illegally entering these Philippine waters.
Perhaps the situation would not be so lopsided if commercial fishing could be developed as an industry in Batanes. As it is now, their small boats and basic fishing gear cannot compete with the seaworthy vessels and sophisticated equipment of a Taiwanese. However,
More local fishermen, even if they can afford to buy bigger fishing equipments, their problem is where to secure this bigger fishing boat during inclement weather, no? So saan nila itatago? So with that, the fishing sector is still in its marginal level.
for all its breathtaking beauty, Batanes has no natural coves. Neither does it have any functional ports, except for the main port in Basco, which has no facilities for storing vessels during inclement weather.
What we need really is a man-made cove, or what I call an all-weather port, where we are to construct a breakwater to enclose the port system inside, so that sea transport will be developed fully in the province.
Not only can the all-weather port provide shelter for bigger fishing vessels and Navy patrol boats, it will also encourage more passenger and cargo ships to frequent Batanes, easing the isolation of the province and stimulating economic activity for the Ivatans.
Once we have that, we could even be a contributor to the national government, or even to the people of Manila. Like, we can now maximize agricultural production in terms of livestock and even crops.
The all-weather port is estimated to cost some 300 million pesos, a figure which a national government is not likely to indulge unless it can be matched with economic viability. Still, the governor would like to believe it is a worthy investment, instrumental not only in giving commerce a jump start, but also in saving the marine environment.
Our water is very rich in terms of marine resource, no? So, unless we have the all-weather port, we cannot develop our fishing industry, and it will be foreigners who will be exploiting our waters. So, yun ang pakiusap ko ho, if the national government could listen to us, this port is a matter of life and death to us.
One day, the wind howled and rain fell so hard, I began to feel miserable. So I went up the mountain to plant a seed. As I knelt before a marble stone, the seed grew into a tree, and I sought shelter under its shade. Often referred to as a ghost town, the village of Song Song, or whatever's left of it, stands as a grim reminder of how furious Batanes weather can be. Washed out by a tidal wave over 30 years ago, Song Song was abandoned by its dwellers, who fled all the way to Mindanao, as far away as they can from the raging waters and the bitter memories they bring. However, the sad plight that befell Song Song is an exception in Batanes, rather than the rule. Residents along the same shoreline have learned from the lessons of the past.
Lagi na kami magkikinig doon sa Pag-asa na pagdating na ng bagyo, ay yung mga bahay namin, yung alam namin na pwedeng ililipad ng bagyo, tinatalian namin yan. Tulad halimbawa yung mga kogon, bubong namin, yan ang number 1 na tinatalian namin.
As much as 13 layers of cogon and reeds serve as roofing for the typical Ivatan house. Its massive walls of mortar and stone are constructed to withstand the constant battering of even the fiercest storm. Cool during summer, yet cozy during the chilly months, which Ivatans refer to as winter, these stone houses add a unique touch to the rustic landscape of Batanes.
Marami na akong sinamahang both Filipinos and non-Filipinos around Batanes. One of the main reasons why they come is they want to see something unique. Yung mga stone houses na yung mga ganito made of stone and lime, wala silang nakikitang iba.
Despite the sweeping changes that have engulfed many of its neighboring provinces, Batanes remains virtually untouched by modern life. The advent of power came only 10 years ago and is available only on certain hours of the day. With limited access to modern conveniences, life in Batanes remains simple and unspoiled.
Meron yung pumupunta sa bukid, meron yung pumupunta sa dagat na mangisda, tapos pagdating nila ng hapon, wala naman recreation dito, di matulog na lang, kaya marami ang mga anak dito dahil wala silang recreation. Tapos pag masama ang panahon, sa bahay na lang sila. Ganun ang pamumuhay dito sa amin.
Self-reliance has become the cornerstone of Ivatan life because experience has taught them to literally save up for the rainy day. Visitors who want to shop for native produce are often surprised to find out that there is not a single public market in all of Batanes. Most families grow their own crops and catch their own fish. What little excess they have would find their way to street corners, where fresh goods are peddled by the piece instead of by the kilo. And like kites flying in the wind, slices of fish left to hang and dry under the sun are a common sight. These provide table fare when the sea becomes inhospitable to fishing. Stripped to the bare essentials, life in Batanes provides a refreshing alternative to battle-weary metropolites.
We still have tourists who are coming to visit the place. Na full pack po sila, no? They have all the canned foods that they wish to take with them, and even water, no? Magdala sila ng sarili ng tubig. To their surprise, because when they come, kahit papano, well, of course, it's not typical city life, yung city food ang kakainin mo, but hindi ka magugutom dito. And the water is, shall we say, I think, kung quality na lang pag-uusapan, mas may quality kaysa yung mga bottled waters.
Dito sa amin, yung peaceful, tapos yung hindi naman polluted, kahit pa ano-ano ka lang dito,
mahiga ka sa daan, mahiga ka sa kung saan-saan, walang makialam sa'yo.
The tranquility that envelopes Batanes is so overwhelming, it is almost unreal. Crime is practically unheard of. Homes are left wide open at all hours of the day, because theft is a strange word to the Ivatans. The only time they bolt their doors and windows is when a storm passes through. Religion is central to people's lives and is a vital force in shaping their values. Shots of gin over plates of marinated fish comprise what Ivatans would call a good time. There are no movie houses, no clubs, no gambling, and no prostitution. In a place where crime totals to about 3 incidents a year, policemen can afford to bike leisurely along, looking for drunks and stray dogs. Poverty is not an issue in Batanes because all the basic needs of its citizens are met. Batanes was recently chosen the most promising province by the United Nations Development Program for providing measurable effort in achieving basic education and primary health care to its constituents. In Batanes, anyone who works, eats. There are no squatters and no beggars. Yet, in the eyes of the national government, poverty can be seen at how time seems to have stood still for the province. Identified as one of the 16 poorest provinces in the Philippines, Batanes has been eyed for priority intervention by the Presidential Council for Countryside Development. A welcome sign of progress, but acceptable to the Ivatans only if it comes with a conscience.
Of course, we want progress, but what kind of progress and at what pace and at what cost, no? We feel that, Batanes has a unique contribution in terms of building a community that has distinct values, respect for all people, respect for nature, respect for the balance of nature. Certainly, we do want development, but development in our terms, on our terms.
In Batanes, anyone who is not Ivatan is an Ipula, an outsider who is treated politely but eyed with suspicion. The Ivatans are among the most gentle and hospitable of Filipinos, but because they have been detached from the outside world for so long, they have developed an insular nature, one which binds the community with a strong cooperative spirit, but at the same time makes them wary, if not resistant, to change. Their uniqueness as a people is reflected in the Ivatan language. Spoken by Batanes natives for over 3,500 years, it bears no similarities to any other language or dialect in the Philippines. Much of the Ivatan's oral history is preserved in the laji, or lyric folk songs, which were never written down and reside only in the memories of a vanishing generation. Bernardo Cabuco is one of 2 remaining singers in Ivana. He also believes he might just be the last.
Yung mga bagong tao, ayaw na sila mag-aral niyan. Pagka ako'y wala na siguro, mabuti kung mayroon pang marunong na panibago, yung huli na sa akin.
Mang Bernardo says he learned the art of singing laji as a teenager, but claims he cannot see the same interest in today's generation of young Ivatans. Perhaps it is because both words and music have to be learned solely by ear, and in a language that is no longer common fare.
Kahit na alam nilang kansyon, hindi nila maintindihan. Kahit alam nila, kung hindi nila alam ang tono, wala rin.
Tuhan dumadanak, duta na rito.
Despite a vanishing tradition, the voices of youth still ring over Batanes, as exemplified by its ambassadors of music, the Coro Ivatan. A veteran of Philippine and ASEAN choral competitions, the multi-awarded youth choir is now facing a crisis that is not uncommon in Batanes, losing its members to the call of higher education.
At the time we started the choir, they have to be in the elementary. Later on, when they were organized as Coro Ivatan, hindi na po pinalitan ang mga bata. Regardless of the year level where they are, we have to keep them. Because it's so hard to start training another group of children to put together with the old members of the choir.
From an original group of 30, the Coro Ivatan has dwindled to about a dozen singers as older choir members move to Manila for their college education. It is a trend common to Batanes, where literacy is pegged at an impressive 97%, and studies make up the major preoccupation of young minds.
Yung mga nasa city, syempre maraming mga amusement, nagpumunta sa nanonood sila ng mga movies, gano'n, may mga outing sila. Pero dito, konti lang, magpupunta lang kami sa mga picnics, Saturday, Sunday lang. Ganun lang, pero pag everyday, wala, diretso sa bahay, study ka agad.
Over the years, their thrust for higher knowledge have lured Ivatan youth to Manila and other academic centers. Sadly, many of them have chosen never to return.
If they find better jobs somewhere else, then we are not expecting them to return. We do not force them to come back because we know that in Batanes, jobs here are so limited, it's so small place, and jobs could not afford to accommodate them.
With limited commercial and industrial establishments, time was when there was little else an Ivatan college graduate could come home to except to go back to farming or fishing. And with the trend of out-migration came the problem of a vanishing culture.
To a point na we forget sometimes our dialect, our language. So if that language, which is our major link among each other, then mawawala yung peculiarity namin.
Fortunately, changes brought about by the advent of electricity, as well as improvements in infrastructure, communication, and transport, have allowed Batanes to upgrade its employment opportunities and enticed its young people to stay. And for those who have chosen to serve their province, life remains a balancing act between pushing a pen and pushing a plow.
The Ivatans, even the mayors and the governors, go to the farm after office hours. Even if we are already professionals, we also have ample time to go to the field and share in the farm work.
No matter how high up in the professional ladder they may be, Ivatans cannot afford to be dependent on a 9-to-5 job for very practical reasons.
People might be too concerned on education, but then they would not be able to apply it for practical reasons. I guess since most typhoons visit our country, we would be forced to work hard in the field because otherwise we wouldn't have anything to eat.
Just as the world is beginning to discover Batanes, Ivatans are gradually learning more about their history as a people. In Itbud, the local elementary school has become the repository of ancient burial jars, which were excavated by accident during a road widening project. Although yet to be carbon dated, experts who have examined the artifacts say they are definitely from pre-colonial origin. And where there are burial jars, there ought to be burial grounds. By the foothills of Mount Iraya, ancient Ivatans have created a sacred memorial to their forebears in the form of boat-shaped grave markers. First discovered in 1994, these burial sites are marked with stones laid down to the shape of a tataya and are pointed towards the open sea. But despite the unique charms of the province, tourist inflow remains limited in Batanes. The lack of regular transport in and out of the province is one factor. Commercial flights from Manila are scheduled 3 times a week, but the slightest change in wind direction can immediately cause delays, or worse, leave a visitor stranded indefinitely. No passenger boats ply the area, also because of the unpredictable weather, with cargo vessels making up the only form of sea transport, delivering consumer goods and merchandise to the islands. But for the Ivatans, it's just as well. Despite the potential for tourism in the island, its leaders prefer to leave well enough alone.
The word tourism, for some of us, we get repelled by that because we are afraid about what may happen to Batanes, like what is happening to some famous tourist destinations where, the community has disappeared.
Again, this fear of opening up entirely to outsiders is brought about by the Ivatans' natural tendency for survival. This time, to preserve their cultural identity as a people.
We are not yet prepared in terms of facilities, in terms of people accepting tourists. No, we had some experience in other tourist destinations where the ill effects of tourism are very much prevalent. No, and there is really a need. What I would like is that when tourists come to a place, it should be tourists. It should be tourists who should be influenced by the resident, then the other way around.
And for the few who have dared to brave the elements and enjoy the rugged splendor of Batanes, the islands might as well be one of nature's best-kept secrets, at least for the moment.
For the people, a couple of technology would be good, but I would not necessarily say that the Batanes would need a lot of tourists to come over here. Too many things would change by then. Let's just leave it as it is.